Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome to the Krame Center for Mindful Living, and welcome back to those of you who are a regular part of our mindfulness community, and a warm welcome to those of you who might be joining us for the first time. So just a little bit about us. We're a global nonprofit organization whose mission is to make the benefits of mindfulness, self-compassion, and positive psychology accessible to all. So our goal is really to help people become more resilient and live better lives through the various programs that we offer. So welcome to our three-part resilience workshop on how mindfulness, self-compassion, and positive psychology can increase resilience and really just contribute to our overall well-being. For those of you who don't know me, I am Catherine Krame. I'm a trained, qualified MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and MSc, mindful self-compassion teacher. And I'm also certified in positive psychology. So before we dive into the workshop, I would love to invite you to join us or join me in a mindful moment, just to allow ourselves to become fully present for the workshop. So please take a moment to settle in, perhaps closing your eyes or just softening the gaze, and then taking a deep breath and inviting a sense of arriving in the space that you're in, arriving in the chair that you're sitting in, and then arriving in your own body, arriving at your own door. And perhaps using the contact points of feet on the floor or sits bones in the chair, hands in your lap, as a further gateway into your own body and into this moment. And if possible, just seeing if you can let go of whatever came before. Maybe you were rushing to get here on time, and likewise letting go of anything that might come later on. So really just giving yourself permission to be here fully. And then now, as you're ready, bringing your awareness to the breath, right? Just following the rhythm of your own breath cycle for the next couple of breaths. And doing so at your own pace. Allowing the breath to be just as it is in this moment. One breath at a time. And then after the next breath, allowing your eyes to gently open and bringing your attention back to the screen in front of you. And maybe just tuning in and taking a moment to notice how you are in this moment before we move on. So today is our second workshop, and it's on the topic of self-compassion and the important role it plays in becoming more resilient. So we're going to explore what self-compassion is, and we will end with a practice that is so easy to implement into daily life. So in the first workshop, we really focused on mindfulness and how it increases our awareness. And when we're aware of what's happening as it's happening, we can recognize when we're facing a difficulty, right? Or need to change a situation in our life. And when we recognize that we're experiencing a challenging moment, it's really important that we learn how to offer ourselves self-compassion so that we're not blaming ourselves or being overly critical, right? So, and I'd actually like to start with a brief reflection on something that may shine a light on your own level of self-compassion. And so this reflection is, how do you treat a friend? So once again, I invite you to close your eyes and just think about a time when a close friend was struggling, right? Or suffering in some way. Maybe your friend had some kind of a misfortune, or they failed at something, or just felt inadequate, and they were sharing this with you. So, just thinking about a situation with a good friend where they were struggling. So, calling to mind as best as possible. Um, how did you respond to your friend in this situation? What did you say? What were the words that you used? And what was your tone of voice? Right? And when speaking to your friend, what are some nonverbal gestures that you used? Maybe you touched them on the shoulder or gave them a hug. So just reflecting on how you spoke to your friend, what kind of words you used, tone of voice. Right? So just thinking about that for a moment. And now imagining how you were towards yourself in the exact same situation, right? How you would be, how you would respond. What would you say to yourself? What is the tone of voice that you would use? What's your posture like? And what about your own nonverbal gestures? Are there any? So just thinking about if the exact same thing happened to you, how would you respond to yourself? And then lastly, I'd like you to think about and reflect on, is there a difference in how you would treat a dear friend compared to how you would treat yourself, or how you do treat yourself in times of difficulty, right? And if you notice that there is a difference, is there a pattern? So just taking a moment to think about how different, if there is a difference, is there a pattern in how you treat your friend compared to how you treat yourself? And for most of us, right, there is a big difference in how we treat a friend versus how we treat ourselves, right? It's very common. And so we're going to be kind of looking today at how we can begin to change that internal dialogue. And so, what is self-compassion? So the definition that we like to use is by Kristen Neff, who is a well-known researcher in the field. And she says self-compassion entails being warm and understanding towards ourselves when we suffer, fail, or feel inadequate, rather than ignoring our pain or punishing ourselves with self-criticism. Right? So really a completely different approach than many of us have. And so then what is self-compassion? Well, self-compassion is really about treating ourselves with the same kindness as we would treat a friend when things go wrong, just as we saw in that comparison, in that reflection. If this is not how you typically treat yourself, know that self-compassion is a skill that we can learn. So if you don't typically treat yourself with the same kind of kindness that you treat others, know that we can change that. And compassion is noticing that somebody is suffering, feeling moved by the suffering and responding to this person's pain, feeling some warmth and caring, and a desire to help in some way. So it even can involve taking action, right? And self-compassion involves making a U-turn, right? That's a Y-O-U turn. And then directing that same level of compassion that you would towards another person towards yourself. And studies really show that people who motivate themselves with self-compassion are more likely to achieve their goals and stick to healthy routines and healthy habits. They're more likely to do so than people who motivate themselves with self-criticism. And according to Kristen Neff's groundbreaking research, there are 3 components to what she calls mindful self-compassion. And that is mindfulness, common humanity, and self-kindness. So we're just going to take a moment to look at that, each of those 3 components. And so first is mindfulness, right? Which is why we actually had our first workshop on mindfulness, right? Because that's the foundation. So it really allows us to recognize when we are struggling, right? Because in mindfulness, we have this increased awareness. So we're able to recognize when we're struggling. And it's this awareness that we are hurting. And then the second piece is common humanity, which is really simply acknowledging that suffering or struggling is part of the human condition, right? It's part of the human experience. We all suffer or struggle, although for different reasons or to varying degrees. At some point in our lives, we will have difficulties, right? It's just part of being human. And then lastly, self-kindness, right? That's the last component of mindful self-compassion. And this really involves being warm and understanding towards ourselves when we do suffer, fail, or feel inadequate, right? It's about bringing a sense of kindness, caring, and comfort towards ourselves. And so there are some things that are that stand in the way of being self-compassionate, right? So let's take a look at some of the obstacles to self-compassion. In particular, let's take a look at the inner critic, right? So to begin with, we can investigate how it is that we speak to ourselves, just like we did in the previous exercise. How do we treat a friend, right? And one of the main ways that we actually sabotage our own levels of self-compassion is through the voice in our head, the inner critic. And we all have one, but many of us have an inner critic that gets in the way of treating ourselves like we would treat a friend. So one thing I want to, be very clear about, so don't misunderstand, a discerning inner critic can often protect us from harm, right? But an overly aggressive or mean inner critic, which so many of us have, can do the exact opposite and be the source of harm, right? So think about it for a second. Do you have an inner critic that is overly critical and calls you names like idiot, dummy, or stupid, and says things like, oh, you messed up again, or you can't do anything right? So if this is the case, it can be very helpful to name your inner critic, right? And when you hear that critical voice, your response could be something like this: not today, nagging Nellie, or go away, berating Bobby, or move over, mean Miguel, or cut it out, critical Catherine. So this personification of your inner critic can be really helpful because it draws attention to the unhealthy way that you are speaking to yourself, right? There's an expression by Dan Siegel: name it to tame it. So by naming our inner critic, we begin to take away its power, right? So that can be the first step in changing our inner dialogue and the first step towards becoming more self-compassionate. And so next, we're going to explore a practice that can be used daily in moments of struggle. And this simple exercise is really powerful, and it can really begin to increase our levels of self-compassion. So we're actually going to move into this practice in a moment, and we're going to end with this practice. It's called the self-compassion break, which is based on the research of Dr. Kristen Neff and also Dr. Christopher Germer. And it can really be done anywhere in a moment of difficulty. But today we're going to do it as a reflective meditation, right? Just to really give you a sense of what it's all about. But once you become familiar with it, it can really be done on the fly in a minute or two, anywhere that you are. Okay. And before we move into the self-compassion break, we're going to just explore something called soothing and supportive touch, right? And I'd like to introduce that to you because we cannot deny the importance of touch. And that's part of the research that Kristen Neff has done, because touch has a physiological effect. It, as you know, with mothers caring for the young, or even with a loved one, touch activates that mammalian caregiving system. And it releases a very powerful drug that we all have called oxytocin. So our own touch with ourselves can be soothing and really highly effective, right? So it might feel strange to, to do that to the first time you touch yourself, but please have an open mind and try it. And you can, once we introduce it in the practice, you can release it at any time. So let's just take a moment to find a supportive touch, whether for you, it's a hand over the heart, maybe it's two hands over the heart, so just take a moment and follow along with me and, try to find something that feels soothing right now. It might change over time, and you can explore this later as well. And then you could explore one hand on the chest and one hand on the belly. Or maybe for you, it's cradling yourself, right? Just cradling your arms or both your cheeks, or a hand on the shoulder, right? So for today, just settle on one that feels comfortable in this moment. And then just know, as I said, you can always explore this further. All right, so we're going to be moving into our practice now. So take a moment to find a comfortable seat. Maybe you need to make an adjustment, or maybe give yourself a little neck stretch. And then if it feels right for you in this moment, closing your eyes or just softening the gaze is perfectly fine as well. And then maybe taking a breath and deepening the breath just a little bit to settle into the body, right? And just bringing in awareness to the breath, and simply notice the breath coming in and out of the body. Just allowing yourself to settle, and perhaps feeling the support of the chair beneath you, maybe the feet on the floor, and the earth below that. Just feeling the support, and perhaps even feeling the support of your own body. And then as you're ready, call to mind a situation in your life right now that is difficult, that's causing you some stress. Maybe it's a health problem, or a problem in an important relationship, a work problem, or maybe it's a situation with a difficult neighbor. But please choosing something in the mild to moderate range, right? Not a large problem. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves as we're first learning the skill of self-compassion. And a couple of things may have come up for you, but just settling on one. somewhere in the range of 3 to 4 on the scale of 1 to 10. And once you've settled on one situation that is causing you a measure of stress, is calling to mind as many details as possible about that situation, including your own internal dialogue, right? So, what are you saying to yourself? And what is the tone of your voice? Are you maybe blaming yourself? Right. So just reflecting on this situation and how you might be talking to yourself about it, what your attitude is towards yourself. And so, really allowing yourself to see and hear and feel your way into the problem. And then perhaps as you're doing this, you begin to notice some uneasiness in your body. So just scanning the body and tuning in to where in your body you're feeling this uneasiness or tension or whatever it is that you're feeling that's associated with this current situation. So, really tuning into the discomfort that you're feeling when you're thinking about this problem, whether it's a tightness in the chest, a heaviness in your heart, a pit in the stomach, or tension elsewhere in the body. Or maybe it's just this overall sense of unease. And then say to yourself slowly and clearly, this is a moment of suffering, or this is stressful, or ouch, this does not feel good. And then next, say to yourself again, slowly and clearly, suffering is a part of living, or I'm not alone. Others would feel a lot like me in this situation, or everybody has stress at one time or another. So, really just allowing yourself to remember that suffering is part of the human experience. And now the invitation is to place your hands over your heart or wherever it feels supportive, and just feeling the warmth of your own touch, allowing the warmth spread through your fingers and into your body. And along with the warmth, a kindness, And now offering yourself some kind and encouraging words. Maybe it sounds like, may I be kind to myself. Or you got this. You can do it. Or maybe for you, it's, may I give myself what I need, or may I care for myself tenderly in this moment. Or maybe for you, it's, may I have the courage and strength to make a change. If you're having difficulty finding the right words, just imagine what a dear friend or loved one that's having the same problem as you, right? Imagine them having the same problem as you. What would you say to this person heart to heart without giving advice? And if your friend were to hold just a few of your words in their mind, what would you like them to be? What message would you like to deliver? And now, can you offer the same message to yourself? So just taking a few moments now to do so, trying these words on for size. Offering yourself kind and encouraging words from yourself to yourself. And now, as you're ready, just releasing the practice and allowing it to be just as it is and just as it was. Releasing the practice now and slowly opening your eyes. And you may have noticed that this practice incorporates the three components of self-compassion, right? Mindfulness is the first thing that we did, which was bringing an awareness to some difficulty we experienced. And then common humanity is the second component, right? When we acknowledge that I'm not alone or others have dealt with this. And then lastly, the final component is the self-kindness, right? Which we brought to the practice with the encouraging words and the supportive phrases, and perhaps even the supportive touch, right? The soothing touch. So remember that we did this as a reflective meditation, but this exercise is something that can be done in daily life within moments. And it can be as brief as giving yourself a soothing touch and words of encouragement like, oh, yeah, that was tough. That's okay, though. You know, you're not alone. So it can be done as quickly as that. And we're coming to time, but I'm going to stick around for a few minutes after. If anyone would like to ask any questions, or if anyone would like to share a word or two about your experience of the self-compassion break into the chat, I will read comments in the chat after we're done. So I just would like to say thank you to everyone. Thank you for your practice, and thank you for your participation today and for joining us. And lastly, I'd just like to remind everyone that our third part is on positive psychology, and we will be holding it on November 30th. And for anyone who would like to learn more about the practice of self-compassion or mindfulness for that matter, we really encourage you to join us for either our 8-week online mindful self-compassion course or our 8-week online mindfulness-based stress reduction course. And so visit our website, thekramecenter.org, for more information and upcoming dates. If you have any questions at all about today's workshop, please feel free to email us at info@thekramecenter.org. So I look forward to seeing you at the next workshop on positive psychology. Thank you all again. And so I'm going to stay on now, and I'm just going to turn to the chat and see. Yes, hello. We will be sending out a recap of the presentation. We send out a key takeaway sheet. So Marta, you will receive that. We will also send out the recording for those of you who'd like to watch it again. And thank you for your comments, everyone. I don't see any questions other than about the slides, and we will send out a one-page takeaway. We don't actually give away the slides, but we will share the highlights and the key points. So I thank you all. If there are no questions, I will hopefully see you all at the next workshop. Thank you and take good care. Goodbye, everyone.